Hello, my name's Martin Fray. I work at the Mary Lyon Centre here at the MRC Harwell, and for the past 20 years plus I've been managing the National Mouse Archive, which is a repository of mouse embryos and sperm that we just distribute around the scientific community so we can share these valuable resources. Probably the biggest change that we've seen overall has been the reduction in the number of animals that we actually use because the techniques have become more efficient, but also a transition away from embryo freezing to sperm freezing, which uses far fewer animals. When I first joined, one of the principal mouse strains that we use, C57 Black 6, was not permissive to sperm freezing, which exerted quite a significant limitation on that process. But through collaborations with our colleagues at the Jackson Laboratory and the CARD Institute, it's at Kumamoto University in Japan, we were able to bring techniques that they had developed to Harwell and subsequently use sperm freezing to preserve the mouse strains that we were developing. And now most mouse strains, if the genetics permit, so they're simple genetics, most mouse strains now are frozen as sperm, and we distribute a large number of samples as sperm. So I got into cryopreservation by a rather circuitous route. I spent 9 years or so at the Institute for Animal Health at Compton after doing a short postdoc, and in that environment I was managing a bovine IVF clinic of all things, where we would freeze down embryos, cattle embryos and sperm for the experimental work that was going on there. And then an opportunity came to work with Peter Glenister in his laboratory, which I jumped at actually, and have been working in the field ever since. The first time I actually came across mice in the research environment was when I joined the MRC Harwell. So the mouse archive itself started out in the 1970s, early 1970s, shortly after two very important publications were released that described the first robust methods for freezing down embryos, mouse embryos. One of those was from David Whittingham and another by Ian Wilmot, of course, from Dolly's fame. At the time, Mary Lyon herself and Peter Glenister were working in the labs, and they immediately recognised the importance of this protocol and started freezing down embryos for their own use. And shortly after that, they recognised the value of freezing down embryos and indeed preserving material for the long term. At the last count, we've actually got something well over 500,000 embryos frozen down, and probably 750,000 sperm samples frozen down. In actual fact, we have 3,000 unique mouse strains that we make available to the community through a variety of resources. Another change that we're seeing is a marked reduction in the number of strains that we distribute as live mice. We do have almost an absolute moratorium on shipping live mice abroad, so we only ship germplasm embryos and sperm. This obviously is another big welfare win for us. And being able to do this is really centered around the access to the techniques that we have available, and also the training that has been put in place by ourselves and by other repositories, so that the scientific community can actually handle the frozen materials that we have available to them. I am actually sat in the Advanced Training Centre here at Harwell, which is a wonderful facility. It offers the ability to conduct desk-based training, but also laboratory training, rather than having to take people into labs and disrupt the routine service work. But what we try to do is introduce the participants to the techniques that we use and give a hands-on experience. So one technician will be given tuition directly from the members of staff. And as I say, we teach the in vitro fertilization, we demonstrate embryo transfer, the embryo freezing and thawing techniques. And the key thing for us is to pass on our techniques and experience, be a conduit for questions, troubleshooting, but really to make sure that the community can access the frozen materials that we have available to them. The other thing that has changed is the access to embryo transfer techniques. We now have a non-surgical technique that we can use. It's very efficient and it allows us to transfer blastocysts, so embryos 2.5 days or so, 2.5, 3.5 days after fertilization. Those embryos are permitted to non-surgical embryo transfer, which of course is a big win in terms of the 3 Rs. Although we've made considerable progress over the past couple of decades, there are still some challenges that we face. One of the techniques that we'd really like to bring into the archive is oocyte vitrification, so that we can freeze the female genetics, set up in vitro crosses with the sperm that we have. It's much more efficient than using natural mating, and of course it allows us to cryopreserve a wide range of genetic backgrounds rather than having colonies on the shelf. But one of the really big jobs that we've got, we're really victims of our success actually, is curating the records, making sure that the data that we hold for the strains that we've frozen down is accurate. And more importantly, I think, is making sure that data is presented to the community in a meaningful way so they actually understand the value of the strains that we have and how those strains could actually help their research. So even now, we do have really quite making a really quite a significant effort to curate the archive and present the material on the website, say in a meaningful and informative way. And of course, none of this would have been possible without having a great team working in the lab and the office area. So yeah, big shout out to a great team.